Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourselves for a heart-stopping tale of unexpected drama and shocking twists in the most unlikely of places, the bustling corridors of an international airport. Meet the Johnsons, a loving African-American family on the brink of the vacation they've dreamed about for years. Little did they know a simple dress code misunderstanding would catapult them into an epic showdown with airline staff, fellow travelers, and even the public eye. Before this day was done, the Johnsons would be forced to make a split-second decision that would change lives, shatter assumptions, and leave the entire airport staff speechless. The story begins on a blistering summer morning at Hartsfield-Jackson, Atlanta International Airport, the busiest airport in the world. It was the kind of humid Georgian day that forced everyone to pack an extra bottle of water and pray the air conditioning was working at full blast inside. Glancing at their phones, passengers hurried through the concourses, eyes darting between the overhead monitors and the lines of security checks. The Johnson family had just arrived at the check-in area, brimming with excitement. They were on their way to Honolulu, Hawaii for a long-awaited vacation, one that had been postponed several times due to budgeting scheduling conflicts and life's unexpected hurdles. Marcus Johnson, a dedicated father of 3 who worked as a high school principal, clutched a neatly folded e-ticket in his hand. His wife Danica, a children's book author, was busy corralling their kids, Devon 14, Yasmin 10, and Miles 6. Making sure no one strayed too far or lost a favorite toy in the process. All around them, the rhythmic beeping of rolling suitcases, the clipped heels of hurried passengers, and the muffled announcements of flight updates formed a chaotic symphony. Flight attendants in crisp uniforms directed confused travelers to the right gates. Businessmen in pressed suits tapped on laptops attempting to finish last-minute emails at charging stations. Families like the Johnsons juggled strollers, backpacks, and the occasional meltdown. Marcus glanced up at the digital display above the check-in counter for Skyjet Airlines. Their flight, SKJ 7 showed an on-time departure at 12:05 p.m. That left them 2 hours to navigate security and find their gate. Perfect timing by Marcus's standards. He liked to plan everything methodically, no last-minute rushes. Little did they know an entirely different kind of rush was about to begin. "Dad, are we going to see volcanoes?" Yasmin squealed, dancing on her toes. She wore a bright pink hoodie with her favorite cartoon princess on the front. Meanwhile, Devon had his earbuds in, trying to look cool and uninterested in everything except his phone. Miles clung to Danica's leg, half asleep, half anxious. "I promise we'll see whatever you want," Marcus assured Yasmin, patting her on the head. "But first, we have to check in and get through security, so let's behave, okay?" Danica, meanwhile, was rummaging through her floral print tote bag to find the family's passports. She'd lost track of them for exactly 12 seconds and had fallen into a mini-panic. "Marcus, you have them?" she asked, exhaling in relief when he held them up. "Don't scare me like that." "All good here?" He chuckled. "Relax. This vacation is supposed to be fun." As they approached the counter, an energetic Skyjet attendant named Carla greeted them. She was a middle-aged woman with a polite smile, her hair in a tight bun. "Aloha," she said, cheerfully referencing their Hawaiian destination. "Heading to Honolulu today," Marcus confirmed. "Yes, we're on flight, SKJ 7. He handed over the documentation. Carla examined the tickets, typed some information into her computer, and nodded. "Looks like you've got seat assignments all together. Luggage looks good, just a quick weigh-in, and we'll be set." While she checked the luggage tags, Miles suddenly tugged at Danica's dress. "Mommy, I'm hungry," he whined. Danica frowned. It was 10 a.m., and they'd planned to grab a snack after check-in. "No problem," Carla said, hearing the request. "Security's a breeze this morning. You should have time to grab something on the way to gate C27. The entire family relaxed a little. So far the day was going off without a hitch. No delayed flights, no lost passports, no meltdown from the kids. They had no clue the real meltdown was waiting just around the corner. Fast forward 20 minutes. The Johnsons had cleared security smoothly, with only the usual bit of chaos. Yasmin's sparkly shoes set off the metal detector. Miles insisted on carrying his stuffed dinosaur through the scanner, and Devon was lectured for wearing his headphones through the checkpoint. All resolved, they made their way toward the terminal shops and restaurants. At a burger joint near gate C27, they decided to get a quick bite. Marcus and Danica studied the overhead menu, trying to ensure everyone got something they liked. Yasmin wanted chicken tenders. Miles wanted a bacon burger, minus the vegetables, of course. Devon, rolling his eyes, requested the same meal as the rest of the family, but declared it wasn't real food. While the children found a table, Marcus noticed a sudden tension at the gate counter. 2 Skyjet employees were whispering among themselves. One pointed discreetly in their direction. He shrugged it off at first. Perhaps they were just sorting out a passenger's seat assignment. The Johnsons happily devoured their fast food meal. By the time they finished, it was 11:15 a.m. Boarding was set to begin at 11:35. Perfect timing. Danica fished out some wet wipes, cleaning off sticky fingers and a bit of ketchup from Miles's face. It was then that they heard the gate agent's voice crackle over the intercom. Skyjet Flight 718 to Honolulu will begin boarding soon. We ask all passengers with disabilities or needing extra assistance to approach the gate first, followed by families with small children. Marcus gestured for the kids to gather their belongings. They approached the small line forming at the gate. As they arrived, they were greeted by a stern-faced woman named Martha. She was neatly dressed in a black skirt suit with a taut expression, suggesting she had little time for pleasantries. "Hello," Marcus said, politely, handing over the boarding passes. Martha accepted them, scanning each one methodically. Then her gaze fell upon Devon. Devon was wearing a brand-new streetwear ensemble, a pair of baggy jeans, a stylish T-shirt featuring an abstract design, and a baseball cap turned backward. Martha frowned slightly. Next, she scanned over Danica's attire, a flowing summer dress with a low off-the-shoulder cut. Finally, she noticed Marcus's comfortable travel ensemble, a short-sleeved polo shirt, crisp cargo shorts and loafers. "What's the problem?" Danica asked, noticing Martha's narrowed eyes. Martha cleared her throat. "I'm sorry, but we have a policy regarding attire. We ask passengers to dress in a manner that's not offensive or disruptive to other passengers. May I see your clothing items more clearly?" The Johnsons exchanged confused glances. "Offensive," Danica repeated. Her dress was decidedly modest, aside from bare shoulders. Devon's outfit was typical teen streetwear, nothing with rude language or imagery. "We're just wearing everyday clothes." Martha's lips twitched. "We've had some complaints from passengers." "Wait, what complaints?" Marcus interrupted, voice tense. "We've been eating at a burger joint for the last 20 minutes. Martha ignored his question, flipping through some sort of policy manual. "Skyjet's policy states we can refuse boarding to anyone wearing attire that is considered obscene, lewd, or disruptive." Danica's cheeks heated. "I don't see how any of our outfits could qualify as obscene." Other passengers started craning their necks in curiosity. A hush seemed to descend around them as the agent continued flipping pages, clearly stalling. Finally, Martha spoke up. "Your son's jeans are torn and too low, exposing undergarments. Your attire is borderline indecent for a family-friendly flight." At that, Yasmin's eyes widened. Marcus felt anger and embarrassment rising like a wave. Devon's jeans were not even sagging. There was a small tear near the knee, which was perfectly acceptable as part of current fashion. "Excuse me," Marcus said more sharply. "This is ridiculous. My wife's dress is not indecent, and Devon's jeans are brand new from the store. Nothing is exposed." Behind them, the line of impatient travelers started to grow. Murmurs of frustration rippled through the crowd. Another Skyjet employee, Carla, the same agent who'd checked them in earlier, looked concerned. She stepped forward cautiously. "Is there an issue here?" Martha spun around. "Company policy, Carla. I have to enforce it." Carla studied the Johnsons, took in Devon's outfit, Danica's summer dress, and then gave Martha a quizzical look. But they're not violating any. She was cut off by a passenger from behind an older man with a sour expression. "They definitely don't meet the standards," he grumbled. "I don't want to see someone's underwear for 8 hours. Another passenger, a middle-aged woman, chimed in. "Yeah, it's unsanitary and unsightly. The airline has the right to enforce a dress code." Marcus could feel his pulse pounding in his ears. This was spiraling out of control. Danica wrapped an arm around Devon, who looked mortified. "Dad, my jeans aren't even sagging," he muttered, voice shaking. "That's enough," Marcus declared, turning back to Martha. "We have tickets. We checked in. We've done nothing wrong. Are you going to let us board or not?" Martha stiffened. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I can't allow you to board dressed like that." The ensuing moments felt surreal. The Johnsons were effectively barred from boarding for an arbitrary dress code violation that seemed tailor-made to target them. Around them, other passengers shifted uncomfortably, some obviously sympathetic, others firmly aligned with Martha's stance. Carla tried once more to reason with her co-worker, flipping through the airline's actual dress code policy. These guidelines say nothing about shoulders or mild rips in jeans or anything of the sort, she insisted. "I think we might be misunderstanding something." But Martha was unyielding. She pressed her lips into a thin line. "They can't board," she repeated, her voice carrying the finality of a verdict. Danica was furious and on the verge of tears. She spoke low enough that only Marcus heard her. "This is racism disguised as a dress code," she whispered. "We can't let them do this to us." Anger flared in Marcus's eyes. He turned to the gate agent. "Is there a manager we can speak to? Someone above you who can explain what exactly is going on?" Martha glared. "I'm the manager on duty," she replied coolly. At this point, Carla stepped in more forcefully. "Martha, let's not do this. I'll call the station manager, Christy. She's the final authority." As Carla moved away, presumably to grab a phone, more onlookers started gathering. Some took out their phones to record. A wave of tension rippled through the gate area. This was the kind of confrontation people often saw on social media, but rarely witnessed up close. The Johnson kids clung to Danica, confused and scared as people murmured and pointed cameras. An elderly African-American woman approached them gently. "Sweetheart, I'm sorry this is happening," she said, patting Danica's arm. "This is disgraceful." A tall man with a business suit frowned at the family. "I'm a lawyer," he said in a hushed tone. "This seems like a violation of your civil rights. Let me know if you need a witness or help." Marcus offered a small, grateful nod, though he was still grappling with shock. Devon glanced around as if seeking confirmation that this was really happening. The boy wanted to fade into the background, mortified that the entire airport's attention was now on them. Finally, Carla returned with Christy, the station manager. Christy was a composed, middle-aged woman with salt and pepper hair. She scanned the scene, noticing the crowd, the gate agent's stern posture, and the Johnson family in distress. She frowned. "All right, can someone explain what happened here?" Martha jumped in before Carla could speak. "The family has a tire that violates dress code. We received complaints from other passengers. I refused boarding." Christy turned to Carla, who handed over the policy manual. Flipping through quickly, Christie skimmed for the relevant sections. The policy states we can deny boarding if clothing is indecent or lewd, showing offensive graphics, profanity, or excessive skin, none of which seems to apply here. She looked up at Devon, then Danica. "So, Ma'am, do you have any words or graphics on your clothing that might be considered profane?" Marcus shook his head. Danica Tears, brimming, answered, "Absolutely not." Christie looked back at Martha. "So, what's the issue, exactly?" Martha's composure wavered. Passengers complained about visible undergarments. The mother's dress is off-shoulder, practically strapless. That could be considered excessive skin. The father's cargo shorts appear shorter than the allowed length. Several bystanders snorted in disbelief at these reasons. Christie pressed her fingers to her temples. "We can't just interpret policy any way we want, Martha. I'm not seeing a legitimate violation here." A heavy silence fell. Martha fidgeted with the corners of a ticket stub, her knuckles white. She mumbled something that sounded suspiciously like, "They're making a scene." Christie dismissed the comment and turned to the Johnsons. "I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. Of course you can board. Let's get your family settled." She typed something on her tablet, presumably reauthorizing their boarding passes. Relief washed over Danica's face. Devon exhaled tension, draining from his shoulders. Marcus tried to swallow the lump in his throat. "Thank you," he managed. "We just want to get to Hawaii." They were about to move forward when someone from the crowd, a different passenger who looked as though he'd been eagerly waiting to add fuel to the fire, spoke up in a loud voice. "Hey, that's not fair. If someone complains, the airline has the right to deny service." Suddenly, a handful of other passengers who had been quietly harboring prejudices found their voices. "I don't want to see sagging pants on a flight," another said. "That's low class." The tension exploded like a powder keg. Martha found renewed energy pointing to the disgruntled passengers. "Look, multiple people object. If we let them board, we'll have chaos." Marcus stared in disbelief. Danica grasped the kids' hands protectively. All around them the mood was splitting. Some people openly supported them, while others, fueled by bigotry and fear, demanded they be removed. Christie the manager looked torn between corporate policy, a desire to treat passengers fairly, and the potential meltdown of multiple paying customers. The air at Gate C-27 was so thick with tension, it felt like the entire terminal was holding its breath. After Christie, the station manager, had overruled Martha's decision and authorized the Johnsons to board it, seemed for a fleeting moment that reason and fairness had triumphed. But that moment didn't last. A voice rang out from the crowd, a man's indignant and loud. "That's not fair. If some of us have concerns, the airline has a right to act on them." Another passenger, a middle-aged woman with a sharp bob haircut and an expensive-looking carry-on, added, "Exactly. That dress is inappropriate for children to see, and the boys' pants are disgusting. We shouldn't have to fly with people who don't respect the standards." The gate, once a chaotic mix of confusion and curiosity, was now splintering into something uglier. Passengers who had earlier stood quietly, phones out, suddenly found the confidence to vocalize their discomfort. And worse, many of them weren't even aware that Martha's claim had already been dismissed by Christie. They were feeding off of each other's biases. Danica felt a familiar burning behind her eyes. Her kids stood beside her like deer caught in headlights. Miles clutched her leg, confused and scared. Yasmin stared up at the crowd with wide, tear-filled eyes. Poor Devon looked like he wanted to disappear. Christie stepped forward again, visibly rattled. "Everyone, please, let's remain calm. This family has not violated our policy. They have every right to board this flight." But her voice was nearly drowned out by murmuring and complaints, a growing mob of concerned customers who seemed to grow bolder by the second. Martha, regaining a fraction of her earlier control, pointed toward the agitated passengers. "You see, I'm not alone here. Multiple customers are voicing concerns. If we force this, we could have a real disruption at 30,000 feet. Carla looked ready to explode. She turned to Martha, her voice low but shaking with fury. "You're the one causing a disruption. You made this personal. I watched them check in. I saw what they wore. This is nothing but an excuse." Martha didn't respond. Her face was pinched defensive. But her silence said everything. Christy pinched the bridge of her nose and walked a few steps away to take an incoming call. The tension was suffocating. Danica leaned toward Marcus, whispering, "Why is this happening? Why can't they just let us fly? We didn't do anything wrong." Before Marcus could reply, another gate agent, one who hadn't spoken yet, hurried over to Christy with urgency in his tone. Christy, we've got another issue. The flight's overbooked. 15 people are on standby and already upset. If they don't get seats, we're looking at a meltdown at the desk." Christy's face dropped. "Of course it is," she muttered under her breath. Now she was boxed in between corporate rules, discriminatory complaints, a brewing PR disaster, and an oversold flight. The logistics were beginning to collapse in real time. She turned slowly back to the Johnsons, visibly uncomfortable. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson," she began delicately, "our flight is unfortunately overbooked. With the current unrest, and certain passengers voicing objections, I'm going to ask something I hate to ask." Marcus's jaw tightened. Christy continued, her voice almost apologetic. "Would you be willing to consider taking a later flight? We'd offer compensation upgrades, full reimbursement, even accommodations if needed." "I don't agree with any of this, but I'm trying to calm the situation." Danica stared at her lips, trembling. "You're asking us to give up our seats? Because they are uncomfortable with us." "I know how it sounds," Christy said quickly, raising a hand. "And again, I'm only asking. You've done nothing wrong. But with the crowd like this, if you board now, I can't guarantee there won't be conflict on board. My goal is to keep your family safe and to de-escalate this before it spirals further." Marcus was seething. His hands were clenched at his sides. He looked down at his children, Devon's face pale with shame, Yasmin already in tears. The thought of giving in to these people, letting them win, was unbearable. "We're not moving," he said, his voice low and steady. "We paid for these tickets. We arrived early. We cleared security. We followed every rule. This is our flight." Christy gave a solemn nod. Understood. Just then, Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again, this time, twice more in rapid succession. He pulled it out, confused, and stared at the screen. "Derek Johnson. Heard you're at ATL. Just saw you trending on Twitter. Everything okay?" His blood ran cold. Trending. He glanced up at the crowd again. Sure enough, at least a dozen people were still filming. Comments, hashtags, videos. This was no longer a private indignity. It was a national moment in the making. He typed back quickly. "Denied boarding. They say dress code. It's insane." Seconds later, Derek's reply popped up. "You want me to step in?" Marcus looked around at the gate at his wife, at his humiliated kids, and he didn't hesitate. Please do. Whatever happened next, they would not walk away in shame. Not this time. Not again. For what felt like the 100th time that hour, Marcus Johnson checked his watch. The time read 11:42 a.m. Boarding should have begun by now, but instead chaos gripped Gate C-27 like a vice. Travelers paced, phones were pointed, Whispers turned to murmurs, and murmurs became commentary. The Johnson family stood at the center of a swirling storm, faces taut with frustration and exhaustion. Christy, the station manager, stood nearby, still attempting to field calls from corporate and keep the situation from exploding. Martha, the gate agent who had started it all, retreated behind the counter with her arms crossed, her posture stiff and defiant, even as the weight of the public's gaze burned into her. Carla, the original check-in agent who had shown them kindness, hovered nearby, visibly uncomfortable with the way things had spiraled. Marcus felt a tightness in his chest he hadn't known in years. Danica, trying to console Yasmin and keep Miles calm, looked as if she were holding back tears. Devon stood motionless, eyes cast downward, his entire body humming with embarrassment and quiet rage. The family had been humiliated, scrutinized, and judged not for who they were, but for what they wore and how they looked. And worse, they were being asked to step aside for the sake of peace. Then Marcus's phone buzzed again in his pocket. He pulled it out absent-mindedly, expecting another useless update from the airline, or worse, a text from someone who had seen the viral video and was messaging out of pity. Instead, his brother's name flashed on the screen. Derek Johnson. You want me to step in? I can pull some strings. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. His brother Derek wasn't just a successful man. He was the Derek Johnson, tech entrepreneur, investor, CEO of AeroShift, a man who had long since risen above the glass ceiling society tried to trap them under. They didn't often pull the my brother's rich and famous card. But today, Marcus typed, "Please do." 3 minutes later, his phone rang. He quickly hit answer and put it on speaker. Derek's voice boomed with calm authority. "Marcus, you there? I'm here." Marcus said, his voice steadier now, with the support of family. "Good. I've been on the phone with Naomi Keller. She sits on Skyjet's board of directors. You're about to see some action. This is unacceptable and they're about to get a wake-up call." Danica looked up in surprise. Even the kids glanced around, curious. Carla took a subtle step closer to listen. Christy's phone rang. She answered, spoke in hushed, tense tones, then hung up and rushed over to Marcus. Her face was pale. "Mr. Johnson, you said your brother is Derek Johnson." Marcus nodded cautiously. "Yes." Why, Christy swallowed hard. "He just called our VP of Operations directly. They've issued immediate directives to resolve this." "But there's more." Her hands trembled slightly as she looked between Marcus and the rest of the stunned family. "Your brother, he just bought every seat on flight SKJ 718. The words hit like a shockwave. For a moment, nobody moved. Then a gasp surged through the gate area like a ripple in water. Conversations halted mid-sentence. People looked up from their phones. Heads turned. Even Martha from behind the counter snapped to attention, her face slack with disbelief. "All 180 seats," Marcus repeated, incredulous. Christy nodded. "Yes, it's done. The flight now belongs to you, your family. The rest of the passengers are being rebooked on another flight this evening. The plane is yours." Danica's knees nearly buckled. She reached out to steady herself against the counter. "He bought the whole plane," she whispered, eyes welling up again, not with frustration this time, but with sheer disbelief and a strange mix of pride and sorrow. Even Devon looked up, blinking. "Uncle Derek bought a plane. For us Miles, too young to understand, the depth of the moment, simply clapped his hands." "Does that mean we get all the snacks?" Marcus chuckled through the lump forming in his throat. "Yeah, buddy, I think it does." But the surrounding crowd wasn't laughing. Passengers who had sided with Martha turned red with embarrassment or green with envy. One man barked, "Wait, what about the rest of us? I have a wedding to get to." Others demanded to know how the airline could allow such a thing. Christie raised her voice to address the gate. Skyjet has arranged for all previously booked passengers to be moved to flight SKJ 943 at 6:00 p.m. All will receive upgraded seating, a meal voucher, and a future flight credit. Please see the counter staff for assistance. Murmurs of frustration flared up, but the energy had shifted. The balance of power had tilted dramatically and publicly. Martha's mouth opened, then closed. Her authority had vanished. Carla approached the Johnsons again, this time with a stunned but genuine smile. "I've never seen anything like this in my life. Mr. Johnson, you're boarding your private 757. Congratulations." Marcus looked around at his wife, his children, and the gawking passengers who just minutes ago had questioned their worth. His hand found Danica's. "Let's go," he said softly. Together they moved toward the jet bridge, stepping not just onto a plane, but into history. The walk through the jet bridge felt like something out of a dream. The corridor was eerily quiet. No shuffling crowd, no anxious muttering, no wheeled suitcases clacking against metal flooring. Just the soft, echoing steps of 5 stunned passengers: Marcus, Danica, Devon, Yasmin, and Miles Johnson. Marcus held Danica's hand tightly, partly to comfort her, partly to ground himself. Behind them, the gate area buzzed with chaos, angry passengers demanding answers, airline staff scrambling to reassign seats. But none of that followed them down the passageway. Here there was only silence and the hum of circulating air. As they approached the plane's entrance, a flight attendant stepped forward with practiced grace, but this time her smile was different, not forced or performative. It was soft, reverent, as if she understood the gravity of what had just transpired. "Welcome aboard, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson," she said warmly. "We're honored to have you with us today." Another flight attendant, young with wide, surprised eyes, stood to the side holding a tray of drinks. Sparkling cider for the little ones. Champagne for the adults, if you like. Miles let out a tiny gasp. "Do we get drinks before the plane takes off, Danica?" chuckled her voice, still shaky. "I guess today's full of surprises." Devon stepped onto the aircraft first and stopped dead in his tracks. He turned back to his parents, slowly wide-eyed. "Ah, guys." Marcus joined him, and his breath caught. The entire main cabin stretched ahead, row after empty row of pristine seats. Not a single passenger in sight. The usual background noise of rustling jackets, overhead bins slamming shut, and flight attendants giving hurried instructions was absent. It was quiet. Peaceful. The plane was theirs. Yasmin darted down the aisle, twirling in circles between the rows of seats. "We can sit anywhere?" she asked, awe in her voice. "That's right," the flight attendant said with a grin. "Every seat is available to you." Devon, still trying to play it cool, slid into an aisle seat, leaned back dramatically, then hopped up and moved to a window. "Actually, no, this one's better. Wait, this one reclines more," he mumbled, flitting from seat to seat like a kid in a candy store. Marcus paused near the front, glancing around in disbelief. It wasn't just that they were flying alone. It was what it represented. Moments ago they had been barred from this flight, dismissed, insulted, humiliated. Now the very airline that tried to shut them out had handed them the entire aircraft. He caught sight of Danica settling into a plush first-class seat, with Miles curled beside her, already tugging at a blanket. Her eyes were glistening again, not with tears of pain this time, but something softer. Gratitude, relief, maybe even a flicker of triumph. A third flight attendant appeared with coloring books and crayons. "Thought these might help pass the time," she said, gently kneeling beside Yasmin. Marcus smiled. "Thank you. That's very kind." A crackle sounded overhead as the pilot's voice came through the intercom. Good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson children. I'm Captain Avery, and I'll be flying you to Honolulu today. I've flown thousands of flights in my career, but this is the first time I've ever flown with just one family on board. We'll be making this as smooth and comfortable as possible. Estimated flight time is 8 hours and 15 minutes. Sit back, relax, and enjoy your private plane. A ripple of laughter broke out among the Johnsons. For the first time that day, their tension began to fade. As the plane began taxiing toward the runway, Marcus sat beside Danica and reached across to hold her hand. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I don't know what just happened," she whispered. He squeezed her fingers. "We stood our ground, and Derek reminded the world that we matter." Danica exhaled slowly. "You know what hurts the most? We shouldn't have needed a millionaire brother to be treated like human beings." Marcus nodded. "You're right. But I'm grateful he was there." Outside the windows, the tarmac raced by, and soon the nose of the plane lifted into the sky. The city of Atlanta shrank below them, and clouds wrapped around the aircraft like a fresh start. A new perspective. About 30 minutes into the flight, Devon wandered up to the front of the cabin where Marcus sat. He stood awkwardly, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Dad," he asked. Marcus turned. "Yeah, buddy." Devon looked out the window, then back at his father. "Is this what power feels like?" The question hung in the air. Marcus took a moment before answering. "This isn't power. This is justice. And justice shouldn't be this rare." Devon nodded slowly, then sat beside his dad without another word. Across the aisle, Yasmin colored a picture of a plane with rainbow wings. Miles had fallen asleep again, one arm flung across Danica's lap. The cabin lights dimmed. The quiet was serene. Marcus looked around and tried to memorize the moment, not because it was luxurious or unique, but because it came at such a cost. This flight, this silence, this private jet, it wasn't about opulence. It was about dignity. And now, at last, they could fly in peace. While the Johnsons settled into their private Boeing 757 chaos still reigned at Gate C-27. Passengers, some outraged, some incredulous, lined up to rebook. The majority grudgingly accepted the airline's concessions. A few stragglers continued to argue, but the airline staff held firm. Martha hovered at the fringes, her complexion ashen. She could see her career unraveling in real time. Carla, attempting to minimize the damage, turned to her. "Martha, you realize corporate is going to open an investigation into this, right?" Martha swallowed. "I was just trying to enforce policy," she said weakly. Carla pressed her lips together, not wanting to say anything too inflammatory, but she couldn't hold back entirely. "You enforced it on the wrong family for the wrong reasons," she replied softly. "And now you've created a situation that could cost the company millions, not to mention the PR nightmare." Martha didn't respond, her eyes vacant. She knew her fate was sealed. The Johnsons felt a jolt as the plane began to taxi. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, kids. My name is Captain Avery, and I'll be taking you to Honolulu today. In all my years of flying, I've never had just one family on board. We'll make this flight as comfortable as possible. Expected flight time is 8 hours and 15 minutes. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey." Marcus almost laughed at the absurdity. The flight had turned from a traumatic confrontation into a near fairy tale. As they ascended over Atlanta, the children giggled at the novelty of having the entire cabin to themselves. The flight attendants served them a lavish meal, steak salad, fresh fruit, anything they desired on the house. One attendant even brought out Hawaiian-themed decorations to amuse the kids, yet a certain heaviness persisted in Danica's chest. She was beyond grateful for Derek's intervention, but she couldn't shake the feeling that a profound injustice had led them to this surreal moment. She thought of all the black families who had faced discrimination, who didn't have a wealthy relative to bail them out. She felt a surge of anger at how close they had come to being cast aside to accommodate hateful prejudices. At one point, Marcus's phone buzzed. It was Derek again. He excused himself and went to the front of the plane to talk privately. Derek's voice came through the speaker, calm but firm. "You okay, bro?" Derek asked. "Yeah. The kids are fine. Danica is fine. We're on the plane, heading out." "But I'm still seething." Derek sighed. "I know. I'm sorry I didn't hear about it sooner." The Twitter feed exploded when some influencer at the airport posted about the incident. "That's how I found out." Marcus looked out the window, watching the clouds drift by. "Thank you, man. I still can't believe you bought the entire flight." "Anything for family," Derek said simply. Then his tone shifted. "Listen, corporate is definitely going to investigate that gate agent. This is going to blow up even more. Skyjet is trying to do damage control, but they're going to have to issue a public apology at the very least." Marcus sighed. "We don't need a huge spectacle." Derek paused. "You might not want one, but it's already a spectacle. I've got a conference call with them this afternoon. They're going to propose a settlement or hush money. I'll keep you posted." Marcus felt both relieved and uneasy. "Thanks, bro. Talk soon." Meanwhile, Danica was seated with Yasmin and Devon in one of the middle rows, the overhead TV playing a children's movie. Miles was asleep in Danica's lap. She glanced at Devon, who looked lost in thought. "You okay?" she asked him gently. He shrugged, fiddling with the tray table. "It's just embarrassing," he muttered. "All those people looking at us like we did something wrong." Danica's heart ached. "You didn't do anything wrong, baby. It was their problem. You have every right to wear what you want." Devon's eyes shone with tears he refused to let fall. "I know. But people still treat us like we don't belong. Uncle Derek shouldn't have to buy an entire plane for us to be treated fairly." Danica pulled him into a hug, stroking his hair. "I know, sweetie. It's not fair. But we're going to keep standing up to it together." Yasmin piped up. "But Mommy, does this mean we're never flying again?" Danica forced a reassuring smile. "Of course not, honey. We'll just be careful which airline we use next time." The sky outside the windows was a breathtaking canvas of burnt orange and fading lavender as the Johnsons' private flight began its final descent into Honolulu. After nearly 8 hours in the air, the surreal reality of their journey was finally giving way to something real, tangible Hawaii. The sapphire waters of the Pacific sparkled below like liquid glass, and the silhouette of the island came into view, framed by volcanic ridges and swaying palm trees. Inside the cabin, the mood was quiet and reflective. The novelty of flying on a completely empty plane had worn off slightly, replaced by a calm, almost reverent hush. Each member of the family had processed the events of the day in their own way during the long flight. For some, the emotions had softened. For others, they still simmered under the surface. Danica glanced out the window, watching the island grow larger with each passing minute. She sat in a wide, cushioned seat near the front of the plane, Miles asleep in her lap, his small face turned toward her chest. His breathing was deep and steady. Her hand rested protectively over his back, as if shielding him from the memory of the chaos they'd endured. Devon was sprawled across 3 seats, further back, earbuds in, staring at the ceiling, but not really watching the movie playing above. He hadn't said much after takeoff, only managing a few one-word answers when asked if he was okay. Danica worried that the humiliation he experienced at the gate, being scrutinized and publicly criticized, had left a deeper wound than he was willing to admit. She could still see the flicker of hurt behind his eyes. Yasmin, meanwhile, had passed the time drawing pictures. One page depicted their family in front of an airplane, with smiling stick figures and a big sun overhead. Another showed a gate agent with exaggerated angry eyebrows being shouted at by what was clearly Uncle Derek with a cape. Danica smiled softly when she noticed it, even as her heart clenched. Marcus stood near the front of the cabin phone, pressed to his ear, speaking quietly with Derek. His voice was low and composed, but Danica could tell he was still walking a tightrope between gratitude and rage. "Yeah, we're just about to land now," he murmured. "Kids are okay. Danica's holding up. But man, it still doesn't feel real. You seriously bought the whole plane." On the other end, Derek laughed. "You're my brother. That wasn't even a question. I'm just glad it made them stop and think." Marcus turned slightly away from the others, his voice dipping. It wasn't just about stopping them. It was about making them feel what we felt, helpless, exposed, judged. "You gave us a voice when they tried to take it away." There was a pause. Then Derek's voice softened. "You had the voice all along. I just helped amplify it." When the plane finally touched down on Hawaiian soil, a soft cheer came from the flight crew. Captain Avery's voice crackled through the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, or rather Johnson family, it is our pleasure to welcome you to Honolulu. Current temperature is a warm 82 degrees. Skies are mostly clear, and your vacation has officially begun. On behalf of the crew, we thank you for flying with us. And, well, we hope you enjoyed having the entire plane." Laughter broke out among the family. Yasmin clapped. Even Devon cracked a grin. The aircraft taxied to a private gate. As they gathered their things without the usual shuffle of passengers blocking the aisles, flight attendants rushed to open the cabin door and step aside, like they were greeting royalty. Just before they deplaned, one of the attendants handed Danica a small bouquet of tropical flowers and a traditional Hawaiian lei, gently draping it over her shoulders. "We hope the rest of your trip is more peaceful than your departure," she said kindly. Marcus tipped the flight crew generously. "Thank you for treating us like human beings," he said simply. They stepped onto the jet bridge and into a new atmosphere. The humidity hit them immediately warm, fragrant and lush. A breeze carried the scent of plumeria and salt water. Waiting at the gate were 2 airline representatives, dressed in Hawaiian shirts and holding gift bags. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, one asked, "We want to sincerely apologize for what you experienced earlier. On behalf of Skyjet, we'd like to offer you a full suite upgrade at the Grand Leilani Resort, along with complimentary excursions and transfers. We're deeply sorry." Marcus nodded politely, but didn't say much. The weight of their journey lingered. The apology was appreciated, but the damage had already been done. As they stepped outside into the fading sun, a sleek black SUV awaited to take them to their hotel. A driver held the door open as the kids piled in, already chatting about the beach and asking if they could try surfing. Danica slid into the back seat beside Marcus and took his hand. She didn't speak right away. They both looked out the window as the landscape rolled past, lush greenery, towering palm trees, golden beaches. It felt like a dream, and yet beneath the beauty, there was still a scar. "I'm glad we made it here," she said softly, "but I don't think I'll ever forget what it took." Marcus nodded. "We'll carry it with us, but we'll also rise above it." As their SUV cruised down the coastal highway, bathed in golden light, the Johnsons finally began their long-awaited vacation. But this wasn't just a holiday anymore. It was a turning point. They hadn't just landed in paradise, they had landed in a new chapter of their lives, one shaped not by hate, but by the strength they discovered within each other. By the time they reached their hotel, a sprawling resort overlooking Waikiki Beach. Marcus's phone was buzzing incessantly. Notifications from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and text messages poured in. Danica noticed Juncture dress code gate was trending, accompanied by "Our Sir Johnson family." Within hours, the story had exploded online. People were outraged at the discrimination. Politicians, celebrities, and activists weighed in. Some condemned the incident as an example of systemic racism. Others insisted it was just a misunderstanding. The debate raged on. Even mainstream media outlets like CNN and NBC ran short segments about it, highlighting how a black family was nearly kicked off a flight for questionable reasons, only for them to end up with the entire airplane, courtesy of a wealthy relative. The narrative took on a life of its own. 2 days into their vacation, while the kids splashed in the ocean and Danica lounged on the sandy shore, Marcus and Derek took a conference call with Skyjet's top brass. Danica listened in, sipping a pineapple smoothie, half hoping the airline would do something truly meaningful to rectify the situation. The call began with the Senior Vice President of Customer Relations, a man named Leon Jacobs, apologizing profusely. "Mr. Johnson, Mr. Derek Johnson, on behalf of Skyjet. Let me say, we are mortified by this incident. We pride ourselves on diversity and inclusion. This was an unfortunate error in judgment by one of our gate agents, who has since been suspended pending an investigation." Marcus's jaw tightened. Yes, well, it shouldn't have happened in the first place. My wife and kids were humiliated in front of dozens of people. Derek, who was known for his no-nonsense business approach, jumped in. "What are you planning to do about it?" Leon cleared his throat. "We'd like to offer the Johnson family lifetime flight privileges with Skyjet a formal public apology, and we're considering a financial settlement to compensate for emotional distress." Marcus glanced at Danica, who shook her head. She wasn't interested in hush money. She wanted accountability. Leaning forward, Marcus spoke firmly into the speaker. "We appreciate the gesture, but there's something more important. We want you to institute mandatory bias training for your employees company-wide, and we want you to go on the record condemning discriminatory behavior, publicly not buried in fine print." A pause. Leon sounded slightly taken aback. "That's absolutely something we can discuss. Of course, we want to ensure this never happens again." Derek nodded. "In addition, the settlement you mentioned, rather than direct compensation to us, put a significant sum towards scholarships for underprivileged students and community programs that promote equality." Leon exhaled. "We can work out the details. I believe our board will be agreeable, especially considering the negative press. We are sincerely sorry, Mr. Johnson." Marcus thanked him, concluding the call. He and Derek exchanged a look. This was the best outcome they could hope for, using the airline's financial resources to aid others who might face similar discrimination. Unbeknownst to the Johnsons back in Atlanta, Martha's career was on the brink. A corporate investigation revealed that she had multiple prior complaints from other passengers, most involving people of color, or those she perceived as not fitting her personal standards of respectable attire. Internal emails surfaced, showing her emailing co-workers with racially insensitive remarks. Skyjet's internal review concluded that Martha had violated company policy and code of conduct. She was terminated effective immediately. Furthermore, she faced a potential lawsuit from a civil rights organization that had taken an interest in the Johnson case. Some of her prejudiced co-conspirators in the passenger crowd remained anonymous, but Martha became the face of that day's discrimination. Her name trended for all the wrong reasons, and she found herself blacklisted from future airline employment. The hard karma had come full circle. On the third evening of their Hawaiian vacation, Marcus and Danica took a sunset walk along Waikiki Beach. The children had fallen asleep early after a busy day of snorkeling. The sky was streaked with pink and gold, Gentle waves lapped at the shore, a soothing contrast to the storm of emotions they had lived through. "It's almost too perfect here," Danica mused, leaning her head on Marcus's shoulder. "Hard to believe all that chaos happened less than a week ago." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I still feel angry sometimes. Angry that we were treated like that at the airport. Angry that this kind of thing happens so often. But at least now something good might come of it. The airline is changing its policies, and scholarships might help other families." Danica sighed. "I just wish it didn't require a millionaire relative to make them listen." They walked in companionable silence, their footsteps leaving gentle impressions in the wet sand. Overhead, seagulls drifted lazily across the vibrant Hawaiian sky. Marcus finally spoke, voice tinged with resolve. "We have a platform now if we choose to use it. People are watching our story. Maybe we can be a voice for others." Danica smiled softly. "Yes, maybe we can. For Devon's sake. For Yasmin. For Miles. So they know we didn't just let it slide. Their remaining days in Hawaii were peaceful. The kids splashed in turquoise waters, built sandcastles, and feasted on shaved ice. Devon overcame his initial embarrassment, eventually finding humor in telling hotel staff. "Yeah, we had an entire plane to ourselves. No big deal." Yasmin bragged to her grandparents over video chat about having endless snacks on the plane. Miles, still a bit too young to comprehend, just enjoyed the beach. As the vacation wound down, Marcus and Danica reflected on how to move forward. They considered writing a children's book about the incident Danica's specialty. She imagined a story that would teach kids about empathy, fairness, and standing up for what's right. Marcus pondered how to incorporate these lessons into his role as a high school principal. When it was finally time to return home, the family boarded another Skyjet flight this time, surrounded by regular passengers. The airline had gone to great lengths to ensure their comfort priority, boarding extra legroom personal apologies from the staff. But what truly mattered was the sense of dignity they carried onto that plane, no longer afraid, no longer silent. They arrived back in Atlanta to a swirl of media requests. Some outlets wanted interviews, others demanded exclusive video footage. But the Johnsons decided to lay low. Their story had been told. Now it was time to let their actions and the airline's newly implemented changes speak for themselves. In the weeks and months following the Johnsons' ordeal, Skyjet launched a high-profile initiative, Fly with Respect. Billboards, social media campaigns, and training sessions spread the message that every passenger deserved to be treated with dignity. Meanwhile, a non-profit fund in the Johnson family's name provided scholarships to underrepresented youth pursuing careers in aviation and hospitality. Marcus and Danica found themselves invited to speak at conferences, panel discussions, and educational forums. Though they never sought fame, they used it to advocate for those without a voice. Devon's self-esteem soared, bolstered by the knowledge that the injustice he endured led to real change. Yasmin, now newly interested in activism, wrote a school essay about her experience winning first prize in a district-wide competition. Miles, growing up, would only vaguely remember the day they had an airplane all to themselves. But the lessons learned would shape him too. As for Martha, she faded into the background of history, a cautionary tale of how prejudice, masked as policy enforcement, could backfire catastrophically. She disappeared from the airline industry, her name a footnote in the saga that catalyzed a transformation at Skyjet. For the Johnsons, life moved on. The scars of that day remained, but so did the triumph, the unity, and the hope that future families would not have to endure such an ordeal. Their story became a testament to how a single moment of injustice, when confronted fearlessly, can spur change that ripples far beyond an airport gate. And so ends the jaw-dropping saga of a simple family vacation turned life-changing event. The Johnsons were pushed to their limits by a discriminatory gate agent, only to discover the immense power of unity love and an unexpected twist of fate. Their emotional journey, which began with fear, anger, and heartbreak, ended in a groundbreaking stand against injustice. Through determination, powerful connections, and a willingness to fight for what's right, this one family sparked a revolution that now echoes across an entire airline and beyond. If this story moved, inspired you, or opened your eyes to the hidden battles people still face every day, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel for more thought-provoking tales that remind us of the resilience of the human spirit. Together we can stand up for change and maybe even move mountains in the process.